In this section, you'll be designing the instructional activities to help your case study reach the benchmark. Traditionally, a lot of teachers just want to find stuff to do in class, or professionals just want to find stuff to do for their clients. And in this way, we've kind of taken a backwards approach in which we came up with the benchmark first, then the assessment, and then the instruction last. And that's not really intuitive. And in fact, this is called backwards design because it's not intuitive. And what we do is we want to make sure that we start with that clear and measurable benchmark first, then align it with some assessment that's going to give us the best evidence of that benchmark, and then we can find an exciting, engaging lesson to help us get there. Most of the time we will do a lesson that involves something like a video or a worksheet. We're not quite sure why we're doing it, and we're just hoping we're hitting the mark. When you use backwards design, it gives you clear guidelines of what instruction really gets you there, and assessment that will really give you evidence, and in that way you never waste any time in class or with your client. So in this section, in the last part of your lesson, you're going to complete your lesson plan by choosing and describing an instructional activity that will allow your case study to demonstrate the necessary evidence that they reach the benchmark. So step one is to, again, to look at the action verb of your benchmark and your assessment to make sure that type of behavior is found in your instructional plan. So if we want to use the word write as our action verb, then we want to identify or create an instructional activity that will allow us to write. If it's for speaking, then we make sure the activity has opportunities to speak. And if the activity involves, or if the action verb involves doing, we need to have instruction that involves doing. If you want an instructional type of approach that will involve combinations of writing, speaking, and doing, we use a one called CREED. And this is something that I and UH Manoa use as a way to ensure, and it's based on indigenous populations of how they teach their own children, to make sure that the lessons are engaging and involve multi-sensory modalities of hearing, listening, and speaking. So in every lesson, you want to ask yourself the following questions. Does the lesson that you're putting together challenge the thinking? Is there great questions you're asking them to really get them to think? When they're thinking, do they get a chance to talk in a small group, a smaller group discussion that will allow them to engage in the actual ideas you're presenting? Do you give a choice for the students? When you give a choice, then students are going to choose stuff that is meaningful for them and also something they can handle. Do you allow them to collaborate with you and other students? That means that they have specific roles in which they work together to achieve a goal. Do you show them how to do the activity through modeling? Do you make sure that you've contextualized it to the students, that it's connected to their own lives and it's useful for them, which means that it's meaningful? And do you introduce new language in the activity itself? I have a mnemonic that I developed to help you remember this. When you teach and model meaningful language, you are doing the T, thinking and talking, the C, choosing and collaborating, modeling meaningful new language. And in this way, your lessons will always be dynamic and engaging for the students. Your text also offers a whole bunch of different types of instructional approaches, including lecture, direct instruction, we call it. And you can decide whether the approach you like is best for you. There's also a section on homework and seat work if you want to include that in your lesson. Other possible resources that you can use for a great instructional activity are websites for lesson ideas. There are thousands of those, and just make sure that you cite where'd you get the lesson from if you take it from somebody else. Then you want to, after you decide on the instructional activity, write it out step by step in enough detail that another teacher could follow your lesson. Make sure you number them and keep each step brief so that you break it down into clear steps. A good example of step-by-step tells you how to do something. Poor example tells you what to do only. So if another teacher tried to do your step, it would only say something like they should do something, and you'd never know how they're supposed to do it. Once you write out the step-by-step instruction, put it into your DOE lesson plan with your standards and assessment, and then you can now finally write in your Part 1C the actual performance specific to the assessment, So for example, this is too big for us to put as our performance sample, so we narrow it down to the specific thing they actually do, which is to write research papers that state in support of thesis. And then go ahead and rewrite your benchmark if you need to, if it's not quite there to match your instructional activity. You can see some examples of this for various groups, and then save it and then submit it your lesson plan in attachment to LaLima assessments, and then the presentation of the lesson plan occurs at the end. Now you're ready to add learning theories to the instructional activity once you submit that, and that's the next section.